Oh, thanks, guys. I had my mic muted. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I did the intro. Welcome to February 8th episode of PubTalk Live, live publishing talk show, airing the second and fourth Saturday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm not going to go through all that again. You can find all the information in the description down below. Just go ahead down there. I'm going to introduce today's guest co-host, Erica Wright. Erica Wright's latest novel, Famous in Cedarville, was called A Clever Little Whodunit in the New York Times Book Review. Her debut, The Red Chameleon, was one of the Oprah magazine's best books of summer 2014. She is also the author of poetry collections, Instructions for Killing the Jackal, and All the Bayou Stories End with Drowned. She is the poetry editor at Guernica magazine. Hey, Erica, did I say that right? The magazine name?
You did. And actually, we've always thought about making a tote that says we don't know how to say it either, because a lot of staff members also pronounce it differently. So yeah, nicely done. And thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, of course. Heather's here. Heather says hi. And Kelly O's here. Holly Davis, hello. Thanks for letting me know that I was muted. Sorry, I didn't realize it sooner, guys. All right. So if you haven't yet voted in today's viewer poll, make sure you go and do that on Twitter. And I'm going to drop the link into the chat right now so you can go vote on that. And the question is, how many books did you read in 2019? And that is based on the Twitter hell that I am in right now, which maybe we'll talk about later. All right. I'm checking and making sure everyone's here. If you are watching this on Twitter, like if you're watching it embedded, on Twitter, make sure you click on through, because the conversations are happening on the YouTube chat. So you won't be able to see the chat there, and I won't be able to see your comments unless you actually click over the YouTube site. And I'll try to remember to say that later, because we always get people who come in later. Kelly's here. Kelly Garrett.
Hi, Kelly.
She was babysitting tonight. She's like, I'm going to try to watch. All right. So we're going to dive right into news items. There's a lot that happened in the publishing industry in the last 2 weeks.
That is true.
We had like a slightly slow time in December where the only thing happening was RWA, but we're back in full gear now. So even though it feels like much longer, it's been less than 2 weeks since Lee and Low released their Diversity in Publishing 2019 survey. Most notably, they said, quote, "There is no discernible change to any of the other racial categories. In other words, the field is just as white today as it was 4 years ago." In fact, editorial is even more white than last year, while marketing and publicity have the lowest percentage of white employees at 74%. That's
not great. Yeah.
So we're going to have a link in the description down below for the full survey. So make sure you go and check that out later tonight. I'll add the links later tonight. I'm getting a little bit of echo. Is anyone else seeing echo? Hearing echo? Not seeing? No? Okay. As long as y'all aren't hearing it, it's fine. I'm back.
Let's see. I think you might have froze, Sarah. Oh no. Sarah told me right before we started that if she froze, I had to take over. So I'm hoping that she comes back very soon. Yeah, I think you're just glitching a little bit, Sarah.
Okay, let me switch my Wi-Fi again. Oh, that's the wrong one. And sorry about this. We were talking about this before.
This tends to always happen to me when I'm teaching in the middle of class. But the problem with teaching is that I'm lecturing, so I'm rambling, and I could have been frozen for 5 minutes. So then you have to go backwards.
Can you hear me right now?
I heard that, yes.
Okay. I'm going to switch over. I'm trying. Turn it on. There we go. It turned itself off. And yeah, I was saying before we started, like I've been testing it all week because of the problem. All right. Am I here?
You're here, yes. I think so.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. My hotspot's not working. But so we had this problem 2 weeks ago, and I've been testing it like on and off all week because I was like, I don't want that to happen again. And it's been fine every time I've tested it. But of course, now when we have to be live, I'm having the issue again.
Yeah, it always happens.
So I'm pulling up my settings so I can turn my hotspot on so I have that ready to go in case it happens again. All right, yeah. So we're gonna put all the everything.
Let's see. Sarah, you're totally frozen for me.
And
not sure if you're frozen for everyone else. Oh, okay. Let's see. So Sarah is giving me instructions, which I definitely need, and telling me to go on to the next item, which I will certainly do. So in the span of 2 days this week, Barnes & Noble and Penguin Random House announced and canceled an initiative called Diverse Editions. The idea was to release a series of classic novels with a new variant cover art featuring people of color. To be clear, nothing inside of the novels was to be changed, including the text of The Secret Garden, which has on-the-page racist statements about Indian people that are never challenged by the characters. After public outcry, they canceled the series and the corresponding event. Penguin Random House tweeted that they will donate $1 to the Wright Foundation, which helps Black authors, for every tweet with the hashtag Black Stories Have Power. So the hashtag is hashtag Black Stories Have Power. And I'll tell you what's astonishing to me about this is how many people had to say yes to this idea, which I think at first blush, most writers, most people would say, oh, that's an awful idea. It's going to, it doesn't make any sense. It's not promoting diversity. In fact, it's kind of doing the opposite of that. It's encouraging people to buy classics by white dead authors. So that was my first thought. Was I just thought of those meetings. How many people were in those meetings, and did anyone speak up, and were they ignored, or did everyone just sort of give the thumbs up?
Yeah. When I first saw it, I kind of thought it was like a parody or something. It was so ridiculous to me that I didn't think that it was a real thing that several people had to like rubber stamp.
Yeah, exactly. That it's getting the rubber stamp. I think there was that Budweiser commercial a few years ago, or maybe even more recently than that. And I should have looked it up before this conversation, but it had the sort of that terrible tagline that was something like "yes, no means yes" or something like that. And I just think this is a multi-million-dollar company. All of those commercials are vetted, and yet somehow no one raised their hand and said, "Hey, I think this actually might be a bad idea, guys."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised it got canceled because as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is one of the most ridiculous ideas I've ever seen. And I mean, that's saying something for publishing.
That's true.
So, so go out and tweet Black Stories Have Power so that Penguin Random House has to give money.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So the 2020 Audio Awards finalists were announced. The winners will be announced at a ceremony in New York on March 2nd. Everyone who has seen the show before knows I'm a huge audiobook fan. And I was actually a judge for the Audies. I don't think I'm allowed to say what category still. But I will say, like, one of my favorites is a finalist, and the two books that I really, really hoped weren't finalists are not. So I'm pretty much happy.
I think that I listen to audiobooks pretty rarely. I work from home, so I don't have a commute. And I feel like I enjoyed them, but I don't think I could articulate why I like a particular audiobook over another. Do you have any advice? What makes something really stand out to you, or anyone in the comments as well? So what makes a really good audiobook to you?
Yeah. While we wait for the comments to come through, so I will say when I started listening, it was a little bit harder for me to get into them. And so, and I see people say that a lot. But I think you have to kind of train yourself a little bit if it's hard at first. And then I prefer the narration where the narration is good and there is like some level of acting, but the acting doesn't get in the way. Because I've definitely heard audiobooks that were like overacted. Or sometimes when they have authors read their own books and the authors don't have any kind of voice training or anything like that, that can be really, really painful. Like,
Right.
yeah, really bad.
Well, Jenny Lawson has an essay about recording the audio for her first book, It Must Have Been, and how stressful that experience was, and how I think her advice was just pretend that you're good at it, which is advice that I love for life in general.
That's good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Lost Goth said getting the tone right, not being over dramatic. Yeah. I think if the main character has a great voice, the narrator can really bring that main character even more alive if they have a great tone and voice style. Yeah, that's good. That's really important to have a narrator who matches the voice of the POV character. I was about to say narrator again. Ebony's here. Hey, Ebony, I'm glad you made it. Ebony's been here almost every episode. We're so glad you're coming back. Yeah, and we're going to talk about, well, the audiobook of the week will be there later, but Kelly Garrett, who's watching, she finally announced the narrator for hers, and it's one of my favorite narrators in the entire world. It's Bonnie Turpin, who narrated The Hate You Give and Children, Blood and Bone and all kinds of books.
Oh, that's exciting. I've read both of Kelly's books and I love them, but I think I would listen to the audio as well. I feel like I would enjoy that. I want to hear something besides the voice in my head. So
yeah. I mean, she's a great narrator, so that's a really good one to start with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Ebony said, I agree with you on the voice. It can really set the tone of the book. Yeah.
Sure. Am I up next?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, this was a sad item, though. On January 31st, the book world said goodbye to mystery legend Mary Higgins Clark, the queen of suspense. She was 92 years old.
Yeah, that's very sad.
When I was reading her obituary, or the Smithsonian article. I'm not sure if that counts as an obituary. But I found it astonishing that she wrote her first book as a single mother after her husband had died, and she had 5 children. So that's a really impressive work ethic.
Yeah.
It's inspiring and also intimidating a little bit.
Yeah. Like I have a dog and a cat and it's hard.
All right. Yeah. My dog requires a lot of attention.
Yeah. And the link we're including is from the Smithsonian Magazine, which I just thought was like a great article. It's not where I usually get my book news, but.
No, it's nice. It's a nice tribute.
Kelly said, I'm so happy Bonnie is narrating. We're going back to the last ones. I love her. Great choice, Kelly. Yeah, we'll give Kelly all of the props for that. Kelly actually told me like months ago who the narrator was, and I've just been dying to like talk about it. So, oh, Heather said I hadn't heard that she had passed. Yeah.
She's one of the authors. Oh, sorry, Sarah.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say she's one of those authors who, my mom always had the books around. So the name to me, in my mind, it's kind of equated with real author because I used to see all, the Mary Higgins Clark's books around the house.
Yeah, and her daughter is still alive and also writing, and they co-wrote some books together. So,
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
yeah, we had her daughter at my library right before I started working there.
Oh, well, that's nice though.
That's how it happens, right?
Yeah.
All right, so the American Library Association announced its 2020 Youth Media Awards at ALA Midwinter 2 weeks ago. Usually when I say this phrase, people return a blank stare. But then when I mention it's a Newbery and Caldecott, and then they realize what that means. So the Newbery Medal for Most Outstanding Contribution to Children's Literature was awarded to a graphic novel this year, New Kid by Jerry Craft. That book also took home the Coretta Scott King Author Award, which recognizes an African American author of outstanding books for children and young adults. So big winner there. The Undefeated by Kwame Alexander and illustrated by Katia Nelson was awarded both the Caldecott Medal and the Coretta Scott King Illustrator Award. So those were the two big winners, but definitely check out the full list of award winners. There are so many more awards that are given out to recognize all kinds of great books. And so when I post that link, make sure you go check those out, because it's a long list, but it's worth it.
I was just in Chattanooga, Tennessee at Starline Books, and the owner of the store and a customer were just googly-eyed over The Undefeated by Kwame Alexander. They love his writing, and then the illustrations are just incredible in that book. They showed me as well, of course, because they just love it so much. So, and I'm always happy to see a poet in another genre. That's always exciting for me. So I think of Kwame Alexander as a poet. I know he has the YA novels as well, and then this children's book, but
yeah,
it's exciting.
He does a lot, though. He has like his own line, and yeah. You're up.
I'm next. Yes. I'm like, let's just talk about Kwame Alexander. Okay.
I mean, we could.
All right. PEN America has named Patti Smith as the recipient of the 2020 PEN America Literary Service Award, given to an individual making an impact on culture and the human condition. Quote, she has testified to the transformative power of literature in her own life and used her stardom to encourage reading and writing in the legions who revere her, end quote, PEN President Jennifer Egan said in a statement.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I love that we had some kind of downer news, and then we had some good news. And I should probably plan that flow a little bit better. Like always end on a happy note.
You're supposed to sandwich it, right? You're supposed to sandwich the good with the bad. Yeah.
True.
We'll open with you should. I said we. I'm assuming I'm hosting from here on out. We should open with Patti Smith next time too.
It's funny. I think I'm thinking 5 or 6 now people on the show named Erica or Eric.
Oh, so
interesting. It's basically the Eric show. Erica show.
I like it. I like my name. I like my name.
Heather said that's a good balance of bad and good news. Yeah, sometimes I feel like all the news is bad, so I'm good. Mm-hmm. I'm glad we have some good ones this week. Ebony's just laughing at us. So many great winners. Hey, Kendra, how are you? Good to see you here too. All right. So in a continuation of the American Dirt saga, I don't know what to call it, executives from Macmillan had a private meeting on Monday with Dignidad Literaria. My Spanish is terrible. I haven't taken it in 12 years. A coalition of Latinx writers, publisher pros, and academics to discuss the recent American Dirt controversy. Reps from Oprah Winfrey listened in by phone as well. As a result of the meeting, Macmillan agreed to committing to increase Latinx staff and books, among other things. And they're going to do a plan in the next 90 days, and they're going to meet again in 30 days. And this was, of course, after they announced that the American Dirt tour was canceled due to threats. And then in this meeting, indicated that the threats were not towards the author.
Right. That there had been no threats, basically. No death threats, specifically.
Yeah. I don't, every time this comes up, I just like that exactly that.
Yeah. Just the trend.
What is happening?
Well, we didn't get to talk about the first item about diversity in publishing and how it hasn't changed at all.
Yeah,
I think this relates, this idea of Macmillan committing to increasing the Latinx staff in books, which is great. And I really hope that happens. But another issue, and I wish I thought of this point, someone mentioned on Twitter, the salaries of the, kind of these entry-level positions are so low that, you can't take them unless you have a second job or you have some sort of, fallback plan. You have someone supporting you, basically. So it's it's definitely a systemic problem. And again, I hope they really are committed to fixing it, but it's going to require a lot of work, not just a few meetings.
Yeah. The last episode, JJ and Patrice talked a lot about that as well. And how like the starting salary for an editorial assistant hasn't gone up in New York in like 10 years. And it's just unlivable.
I interviewed at one of the big five, my fresh out of college, and I was shocked at the salary. And I don't think there's any way. I was living in New York. I had very cheap rent, actually. I was living in one bedroom with a roommate, the way you do. And I still don't think there's any way I could have afforded it. I took a different job with an art gallery and even though writing is obviously my passion, I found my way back here. But the starting salaries are just, they're shockingly low. And as you're saying, they haven't really been raised in a decade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely looked at it myself and I've been talking more and more about it lately. But like, I'm really good at math and I can't make the math work,
Right. Yeah. I'm up again. Yeah, I'm bad at
fine.
this.
It's our last one, so you're good.
Oh, okay.
We've been
Excellent.
chatting for a while.
All right, this is about money too. I feel like it could be our money episode. Amazon, which is known for keeping most of their numbers close to their chest, announced that authors earn more than $300 million from their KDP Select program, which pays per page read. They said they have more than 1,000 authors who had royalties of more than $100,000 in 2019 through the KDP program.
Yeah, it's very rare to get any numbers out of Amazon. So every time they release anything, people kind of like latch onto it. But this more than 1,000 authors had royalties of more than $100,000. And so that opens up the discussion about, which has been a problem on KDP Select for a long time, book stuffing. Do you know about this book stuffing?
I do not.
Okay.
It sounds nice. It sounds like a pastry. Is it something positive?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's really sweet, though. No. So it's a problem where I guess they're authors. Sometimes they're not authors. Sometimes they're just straight up scammers.
Oh.
But where they pay per page read, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll put like a whole bunch of extra information. So like the book is over. The book is like however many pages, 250 pages, and then there's like 50 pages of like the first 50 pages of the next book and like an interview with the author, and they'll just have like a whole bunch of extra stuff to keep people from reading or to keep people reading. But then also what they do, and I think Amazon has cracked down on this, is they would have a table of contents and there would basically be like 50 blank pages and then chapter 1. And so you click on chapter 1 and it counts as being 50 pages being read.
Oh, wow. That's sneaky. Yeah. That's really sneaky. Yeah. Everyone else here has already heard about this. You're like, oh, this is
this is great. Sneaky. I love.
That's some creative cheating.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of problem. And like David Gowron, I don't know if that's how you say his last name. It has a lot of silent consonants. He talks a lot about it on Twitter. So like, if you want to learn more about it, he talks a lot about that on Twitter. Heather has a good point. That sounds like a lot, but how many make less than 100K? And that's a really true statement. I work with a lot of like brand new authors, and they'll say, well, like these authors are making this much money self-publishing, but they don't understand the work that has gone into that. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, my first thought was, I have to go back to the number. More than 1,000 authors are making more than 100,000. But I mean, how many authors are self-publishing? It's a lot more. I mean, more than 1,000 to me means like 1,001, right? Like so I mean, there are a lot of authors who are making $1 a year, $10 a year, especially when you think about costs and things like that.
Yeah, there are a lot of authors who are making negative money after spending money on covers and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people see stuff like this and they think, oh, it's easy, I can make so much money.
Right.
When it's actually really hard to get to that level for most people. Some people, I feel like, just luck into it.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to say that to be discouraging. I think there are a lot of, there are definitely pros and cons to self-publishing, but I find that those statistics, I get a little worried that they are just misleading to someone who's new to writing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you just have to be smart about it. And a lot of people rush into it a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I self-published some of my romance books, so I have no problem with self-publishing.
Yeah. I think it can definitely be the right path, but especially for someone who knows what they're getting into or gets good advice. I mean, there's a lot of great advice online. I send everyone to Jane Friedman's blog because I think she has really good advice on a lot of publishing topics.
Mm-hmm. There was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. So the other part of it is I know an author, and she'll do workshops on like how to make 5 figures a month on KDP Select or whatever.
Yeah.
And I know her personally, and she does make 5 figures a month. It's true. And she also spends 5 figures a month on advertising.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you don't have that money to risk,
yeah.
So there's a lot of different factors involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you do have to be proactive in not only the design things that you mentioned, sort of, cover and text and copy editing, but so much of it is paying for ads on Amazon.
And it's running a business, and there are a lot of people who just aren't cut out to run a business, which is not a judgment. It's
no, definitely not. Yeah, it's hard skill.
But I also love every time they talk about how much money they've given out through KDP Select, they phrase it really oddly. It's something like, we chose to give $300 million. And I'm like, how does that? I want to know who's doing that math.
Yeah, no, it's odd. It's odd for me. I think for me, it's the same as the more than 1,000 authors things. It's very tricky. It's tricksy wording. It's a little bit tricksy.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna take.
Oh, I have water. I have my cat. I brought my cat glass for you all. It's my favorite.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Today I'm doing the Ninja Turtle.
Oh, that's good too. Yeah.
I know Ebony always likes to see what cup I'm drinking. All right, so we're gonna bring on Alex. We just kind of rambled for a bit. All right, so Alex Segura is the author of the Pete Fernandez mystery series set in Miami. The most recent and final installment, Miami Midnight, came out in August from Polis Books. Alex has written numerous short stories that have appeared in numerous anthologies and a number of best-selling and critically acclaimed comic books, including the superhero noir, The Black Ghost, and Archie Comics titles like The Archies and Archie Meets Ramones. He also co-created the Lethal Lit podcast from iHeartRadio. So please welcome to the show, Alex.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you? Thanks for having me. I feel like I just burst into your chat. I've just been having my blue M&Ms in the green room.
Kendra likes our drinkware, so I just thought I needed. Do you have any interesting drinkware, Alex?
Oh, big glass. Almost done, so I failed at that. I should have brought my Spider-Man cup or something.
It's like you should have. I have one. I'll go get it for you. Yeah, that's a secret that no one knows to live video broadcasting is make sure a cup is interesting.
The subgenre of what you're drinking or where you're
Solid. It's solid advice.
So Heather's saying hi.
Yeah,
Ebony is saying hi. Yeah, I don't know where Kelly is. She said earlier only one of her charges was asleep. So
she said she was going to listen, but maybe she's gone. Maybe she bailed as I signed on.
She's like, "Oh, Alex is here. I'm out."
Yeah.
Daniel says hi.
Hello.
All right. So, oh, there she is. Hey, Kelly.
Yay.
So for those of you who aren't watching, Kelly and Alex are good friends.
Yeah.
It's not just some random person that we're like, where'd she go?
Eric and I are buddies too.
It's true.
Friends.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's true. It's a small world, the crime world. The crime writing world, I should say.
All right. So, Alex.
Yes.
You announced that. I know. You announced that you're writing a Star Wars book.
Yes, I'm writing a Poe Dameron YA novel that hits in August. So that
I didn't know it was YA.
It is YA, yeah. Yep. I
can
confirm that.
Yeah,
so that's exciting.
That's exciting.
So what can you tell us?
Not much,
I don't really be like doing like formal press for it for a little bit, but if you watch the new movie, you'll have some questions about the character, and hopefully this book will answer them. Some of them. So,
all right.
I was really excited watching the movie because I knew I was working on the book, and I was like, okay, this is
nice.
Into that nicely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you start writing it?
It was a tight deadline. I'm still working on it now, but
okay.
So late last year, I would say, which wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. And I know people always have these kind of questions, so I'm going to ask for them. Like, how did you get invited to write that? Or was like, did you seek out, or they seek you out? They
sought me out, which was flattering and exciting and awesome. I mean, I think they like the Pete books, and I try to hop around and do different things. I've written, Lethal Lit was a YA podcast as much as a crime podcast, and I've written other characters that aren't my own, like Archie. So I think there's an idea that I can at least manage IP. Like I can play in a sandbox, and I know what the rules are for certain characters, and I'm a pretty passionate sci-fi fan. So Star Wars and Star Trek were a big part of my growing up and adulthood. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like any sort of pressure because of like the kind of craziness that surrounds Star Wars fandom?
I just try to write. I just trying to do the best I can, and hopefully that people can understand that and see the work, and I'm curious to see what people think of the book. But you can get so bogged down, and this happens with my own books too. You have your own little base of fans, and what their expectations are. But I think the trick is to just be true to yourself and hopefully write the best story you can, and that'll usually appease whoever. You hope.
All right. Yeah. Have you listened to a Star Wars audiobook?
I have. I actually did a lot of. I was listening to the audiobook discussion, and I'm a big audiobook listener because I have a decent commute. So I have like my commute audiobook, and then my at home print book. And then if I've fallen into that trap sometimes, if I buy something on Kindle where I do the Whisper Sync, where you kind of sync up your Kindle read to your audiobook, and so it can pick up automatically. But I listened to Chuck Wendig's Aftermath and the Zahn, the Thrawn trilogy, the original one, which was good. I reread those, and yeah, I mean, audiobooks are fun. I've dropped a book because the audio narration was bad, and I've also sought out books from narrators I like Scott Brick, who did Mystic River, and the Stephen King books are always 95% of the time have great audio narrators. I did listen to a bunch of them.
Yeah. So for anyone who hasn't listened to one, they have background sounds.
Yes. And so the Star Trek ones do too.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I haven't listened to any Star Trek ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like I mostly liked it, but sometimes in Chuck's books, some of the battle scenes, like it was like a little too much for me. I was like,
Oh yeah.
lasers and all kinds of crashes and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Um,
had just finished listening to the Dune audiobook, and that
yeah.
was pretty intense in that it was one narrator, but he changed his voice for each character. And I think that's
Wow.
expected, but he changed it so significantly that sometimes I had to double check. And there were also
Wow.
points where there were other actors. So it wasn't just one main
Hmm.
narrator doing everything. They
Oh,
had other
Yeah.
people in. It was almost like a drama, audio play, which was interesting. But I was already, I guess, already shaken up. So the next whatever I read next was bound to be calmer than Dune.
Yeah,
and
sorry, I just finished
no,
Queen Shadow, which is a
Mhm.
Padme book.
Yeah.
And it had all the background noises, but there were no battle scenes. Well, there was one battle scene. And so I was like much more happy with the background effects because then they didn't distract me.
Yeah. I can imagine.
I was just going to say, Lethal Lit has a cast as well, right? It's been a while since I listened to it, but it was not just one narrator, right?
Yeah,
Your podcast.
yeah, it was a whole cast, and
Yeah.
I think one of the coolest parts of that process was sitting in on a table read. Like we went into a studio,
Oh,
and all the actors came and they read the script, and Monica Gallagher, my co-writer, and I were just looking at each other like, wow, this is really happening. Like these people are reading what we said. So in many ways, like some audiobooks are as elaborate as Lethal Lit, which is basically an audio drama. But I think the trick with Lethal Lit is we were trying, the conceit was that it was a true crime podcast. So if you listen to it, you think it's kind of recorded and produced to sound like Serial or something like that, when obviously it isn't, but that was the hook. So
Heather
yeah, it was
says
really cool.
oh, sorry. We keep going at the same
I
time.
know. All I was saying this time is cool. It sounds really cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you for listening. I'm glad people liked it. I'm really fond of those characters.
Heather said I'd love to read a Star Wars novel. Well, when is it coming out? August?
August 4th.
In August, you can read Alex's.
Yeah.
So,
Does it have a title? Does it have a separate title?
Yeah, it's a Poe Dameron Freefall.
Cool. Sounds good.
Okay.
Freefalling.
Ebony said, I can't imagine the pressure of writing something so well known with so many dedicated fans. I bow to you, Alex.
I hope I live up to your bow.
All right, so I feel like I badgered you enough about Star Wars. We can move on now.
That's good. That was very, very friendly, light badgering, so I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, I interviewed you right before Miami Midnight came out for a Lit Reactor. So I was trying, I don't want to repeat questions, but I am curious.
Okay.
So we were emailing back and forth kind of right before the release, which is clearly a different energy than several months in the future. So I'm just curious how it feels now to have wrapped up a series, now that you have hopefully had a moment to kind of catch your breath and are not kind of in the midst of publishing that novel. How does it feel to kind of have ended Pete's story?
It feels, yeah, it's a great question, because I think when we were emailing, I was in the depths of like promotion and just trying to get, book launch is such a stressful, unique period of time that I think we can all relate to. But I think with some distance, I'm proud of the series as a whole, and I'm actually really happy with the book as in and of itself, because I feel like I did end it on a good note, and I could come back if I wanted to, but if it's just those 5 books, I'm really proud of them. You know this as well as anyone, that endings, not just endings of novels, but endings of story, arcs are really challenging. So I had to try and loop in everything that came before and give a nod to everything without making it seem like I was just running through a checklist, and still having a meaningful story, and still leaving enough open that, someone reading the series doesn't think it's over forever, even if it might be. But it was challenging. It was much harder than I thought it would be. And I went into it with it was just a stressful time. Like, I think we were having another kid, and there was just a lot of busyness going on, and my deadline was much tighter with the 5th book, and I didn't really want to rush it. I wanted to spend as much time as I could and give Pete a meaningful ending. So I think now with some time, I can look back and be more proud and happy about it. Whereas I think when we were emailing, I was like, oh my God, this is coming, and and I hope people enjoy it. But I think I'm actually really proud of it overall, and I think it stands really well as these 5 books. So that's a long-winded way of saying I'm much happier now that I'm not writing or that I'm just not dealing with that pressure of like running towards the deadline.
Yeah, I
and you
have
have some.
noticed though. Speaking of badgering, I have noticed though on Twitter people keep really badgering you. Is this really the end of Pete? So hopefully that's a compliment and not frustrating.
Well, it's funny. I mean, Eric, we keep talking about this, but Eric and I have this story that we were working on, I think before Miami Midnight came, before that was announced as the last book. And I like to do these novellas where I collaborate with other crime writers, and we were going to do one with Pete and Kat Stone, Erica's PI. So that'll happen too. So there's going to be another Pete story. It's just not going to be after Miami Midnight. But
Right.
a lot of that reaction was really changed my perspective on the book, because as I was finishing it, I was like, okay, I'm going to be done and this will be that. And I can move on to something else. And in the writing, I was, I think once it was announced as the last one, that's when it really kind of actually affected the writing, because I saw the response and people were not just angry, they were just sad. They were like, oh my God, I was really just getting into it. And, what are you going to do to Pete? Like, are you going to kill him? Blah, blah, blah. And that really brought it to the fore that people really care about these characters. Like, even not just Pete, but people were like, what's going to happen to Dave? Or what are you going to do with Kathy? Like, how what's going to happen to these characters? And that was really heartening. It's the plight of the author. You're like, at least somebody's out there reading. They're really engaging with these people, which is good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sarah, I think I interrupted you before. Sorry about that.
Oh no, I was just saying that it helps to have some distance from it too. For
sure. Yeah. It just it's just nice to see it as this completed thing. We get in the trenches with each book, and the last book was really interesting because I kind of had to become a student of my own work, because you're tying up all the plot threads from the first four, so I had to go back and read each one, and that was really interesting from an archaeological perspective. Just like, wow, I did get better. Like, there is some momentum here. Like, and Pete's journey did get better, and so I felt like it was a fitting end note for him and everyone else, all his other friends, if they survived.
When did you might not even be able to remember this? When did you start writing the very first draft of the first book, Silent City? Silent City is the first one, right?
Yeah, Silent City is the first one. It came out in 2013 from a really small press, and then Polis picked it up a few years later and published the whole series. But I started it, I want to say 2009, maybe a little bit before then. I had just moved to New York a little bit before, and I was working in comics. So, they always say, when you make your hobbies your jobs, they become jobs. So I started reading a lot of mystery novels as kind of my distraction. And I read a lot of really, really strong novels in terms of setting and protagonists. And that really made me passionate for, I guess it gave me kind of the hubris to try and do it myself. I was like, there's no Miami definitive PI series, so I'm going to write it myself. And I think that's kind of why I do anything. Like, I just kind of feel like I'm going to do that. And it doesn't, I later on discovered that there were many great Miami PI stories. I haven't read them yet, but it was nice to have that kind of youthful ego push me to do it. So I try to listen to that voice as much as I can.
And would you set another book in Miami, or do you feel like you think you've done that now?
I'm working on a standalone crime novel that has Miami elements. So I feel like there's no way that I feel like all my work is going to have some. I mean, aside from science fiction or stuff where there is no Miami in the universe, but I think most of my work will have at least some element of Miami. And the standalone, the character's from Miami. She's just living in New York. So
okay, nice.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. I know people who've done that.
All right. So on my Patreon, we give the people opportunity to submit questions ahead of time.
Okay.
And so we have a question from Lodestar, who is very interested in your work related to Archie. So they have a couple of questions. The first part is the company involved with the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina or the Riverdale show?
Yes, both shows are done in partnership with Warner Brothers and the CW, but they're based on the Archie characters. So,
are you consulted at all, or do you have anything to do with it?
Yeah, we deal with them pretty regularly. I mean, they have their own The showrunner Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa is our chief creative officer. So there's a lot of connective tissue between the shows and the publishing. But we're in contact with them pretty regularly.
Oh,
I mean,
that's
they
cool.
have their own writers' rooms and stuff like that, but they're basing a lot of stuff from actual Archie comics, which is exciting. It's just fun to see little hat tips in on TV that you had some small part in.
That's fun.
Yeah.
He has a question. What would you change about Riverdale if you could?
What would I change about Riverdale if you could? I don't know if I'd change anything. I think Riverdale is like one of this is it kind of accomplishes a really challenging thing. It's really idyllic, but it's also pretty diverse and representative of today, which I think it probably wasn't maybe 10 or 15 years ago before our CEO, John Goldwater, joined the company. So, and one of his mandates when he came in was, I want it to feel like Archie's living in today, not in the 50s. And I think that's when you saw a lot of new characters being introduced, a lot of newer storylines, and just it became a little more freewheeling. So I don't think I would change anything. Maybe a couple more vegan options if possible.
And so one final question from Lodestar is, what inspired the Archie versus Alien series?
Archie versus Predator.
Predator.
Yeah, no, it's we were having a creative summit. I think it was like the first ever Archie creative summit, and it was a few years into the new CEO's time, John, and he just said, I want to try crazy things. Like, what are the craziest things you could think of? And our chief creative officer said, "What, we should do stuff like Archie Predator. Like, would they go for that?" And so after that meeting, we reached out to Dark Horse, which had the publishing rights for Predator, and they were up for it. And we just released the second series, which is in a much grittier style, but people love that stuff. They just love the weird pairings of Archie with like Predator or the Ramones or Sharknado, or we're doing Archie meets the B-52s this month.
Oh, fun.
Yes, I'm co-writing that. So.
Oh, awesome. That sounds super fun.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's so funny. That's definitely not two properties I would have ever thought to put together.
No, it's pretty perfectly. Like, it's just it's done in this kind of, not to like toot my own horn, but it's just done in a kind of classic way. And it's, Archie is he's working at a at a TV station, and the B-52s happen to be a guest, and they need an opening band. And then Archie's like, oh man, I just broke up my band. And so then the B-52s have to help him reunite the Archies. So, yeah,
that's good. I like it.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, there's some fun little moments there. So,
well, to bring it back, I feel like
switching gears
a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know nearly enough about comics to ask smart questions about it. So I'm like, let's move back to mysteries.
I should send you a list. I should send you like a graphic novel list.
Oh, I've asked you for recommendations before, and you always give me really good ones. And I have to tell you,
you never respond. And I was
no. You're always great about giving me recommendations, and I'm like, I'm on it. And then I get intimidated again. It's hard to jump into a new reading genre, but I need to do better about that.
It is hard.
Yeah.
I'll work on like a 101 list for you.
Oh, fantastic! That's the reason I came on tonight. I need a tutorial. But you talked about this a little bit. So you were working for Archie Comics 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. You started reading mysteries, but what specifically about noir attracted you? Because I feel like noir is a little bit specific and a little bit different from just your standard whodunit mystery or a thriller. I mean, noir has this whole tone and everything. So was there something specific about that genre that drew you towards it?
Yeah, I think what really resonated for me, at least, I have this short list of novels that I always repeat, and I'm sure the authors I mentioned are tired of it, but it was just really flawed protagonists who weren't necessarily like these alpha private eyes. And the idea of noir is that your protagonist is in a hopeless situation and in the desperate situation that they've kind of brought upon themselves through their own inability to, through their own vices. They make mistakes, and these primal things pull them into dark places. And so when you mix that with the private eye genre, it's really interesting. And I read all the classic stuff like Raymond Chandler and things like that, but I also wanted to see a story where you found out how Philip Marlowe became Philip Marlowe, and you never see that, which you don't need to with Philip Marlowe because it's told in such a romantic, great way. But books like George Pelecanos's, Nick Stefanos books, the Laura Lippman, Tess Monahan books, Dennis Lehane's Pat and Angie books, and I love those because you do get to see the PI become the PI. It happens quickly in some, like I think Tess is a PI right away, and Nick Stefanos never becomes a PI until much later in the Pelicanos universe of books. And I think Pat and Angie, they are PIs already from the beginning, but it's all about their journey, and they're never universally successful. You know, they're not like these invincible knights that can just beat back the bad guys. And so the idea of a really flawed protagonist was something that resonated with me. And each of those books are so strong in setting that you really get the dark side of these beautiful cities like DC and Boston and Baltimore. And I thought that would really resonate with Miami, just being this tropical paradise that has a really dark side. So I just cribbed everything from those books. So that's a great question.
Pete starts out in such a low place, and then we get to see him. He doesn't have a kind of an arc that just goes straight up. It's much more complicated than that. But yeah, he definitely starts out in a pretty broken place, and we get to see him kind of put himself back together again.
Yeah, but I'm glad you noticed that, because I think it's funny. I was thinking about this. You know, now I can think about this as a whole because it's done. Like, I remember handing the first book to a friend, and she was like, "I really love it. Just don't get him sober. Like, I want to, I just want to read about him like suffering." And I didn't expect him to get better so quickly. Like by the second book, he's going to meetings, but then he still has another fall, and things go up and down. And so I did appreciate that kind of aspect to it, that it's a little bit more of a roller coaster as opposed to every book he gets a little bit better. So
yeah, and more believable that way, I think.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I know, you know, people struggling with addiction, it's not a linear path. It's something that's a big topsy-turvy. So.
Yeah,
for sure. All right. So it's our final question. It's a question I ask every guest. And I did not give you a heads up on this. Sometimes I give people a heads up, so I'm sorry.
It's a doozy. It's a doozy of a question. So
Ebony, get ready for the face.
No, I'm just kidding.
So the question is, what is the most important book that you've ever read and why? And you define important however you want to.
That is a good question. I am right next to my okay, well, this is a weird answer, and it's not really a book that. Okay, so I read The Godfather when I was like 8. I should not have read that book when I was 8. But whenever I tell people that, it kind of explains itself. Like it really like pushed me towards that kind of fiction. It's a really pulpy, gritty, like nasty little book in comparison to the movie, which is very like regal, and you know, it's much more like this epic saga. But if you read the Godfather book, it's a really just kind of down and dirty crime novel. And I remember reading that at such a young age. And there's a lot of stuff that I probably should not have been reading at 8. But I think it left an impression, and it made me really interested in crime stories and true crime, which true crime is such a huge influence on my fiction. If I read a true crime book, it finds its way into my own stuff, whether it's just like little factoids or just plots. But I think it kicked down a lot of doors for me that I didn't really realize I was walking through until much later.
Nice.
I'm proud of myself. Yeah.
Oh,
I was expecting that question.
Yeah, that was a good answer. I'm impressed.
Ebony always comments on the faces people make when I ask that question.
Oh, you did. I survived. Thank you for your support.
All right, so that is all we have for you, Alex. So can you just let people know what you have coming up next and where we can find you, like on Twitter or whatever?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Alex_Segura, Segura. My website, alexsegura.com. Archie Meets the B-52s is out in February. The Black Ghost Volume 1, which is a collection of the first 5 issues, will be out, I think, sometime in March. And the Poe Dameron Star Wars novel will be out in August. So pretty quiet year for me.
I'm so busy here.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you, Alex,
for having me. This was awesome.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And you can hang out, and if you want to chat with us afterwards, or you can just go if you need to go. So whatever, you need to do. All right, so we'll see you in a couple minutes then.
Awesome.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
All right, well, that was fun.
That was fun. Alex does so much. I feel like we could have a 3-hour conversation just about each of his different endeavors.
Yeah, he was actually one of the first people that I invited to be on the show when I started it. And he was going to do November, but then there was a schedule conflict. And so here we are in February. So
perfect.
Yeah. Speaking of November, that's so weird. I did not plan that at all. The audiobook of the week today is actually called Killing November.
Ooh, perfect.
I know, weird. So this is a YA audiobook by Adriana Mather. And I'll just read the quote from the publisher. From the #1 New York Times bestselling author of How to Hang a Witch comes a thriller set at a secretive boarding school where students are trained to carry on family legacies that have built and toppled empires. And November's father sends her to school after her aunt's house is robbed, but she has no idea what the school is. She has no idea what she's in for when she gets there. And this was like a sleeper hit for me. Like, this was a surprise for me. It was a book that I'd requested a while back from the publisher because I thought the concept sounded interesting. And I actually haven't read her first book, How to Hang a Witch, which I know was really popular. And it's like, I don't know, it's like the kind of YA that I really like. It's like boarding school, and it's like there's a lot going on. It's like really fun, and it's narrated by Cassandra Morris, who has narrated like a ton of audiobooks, especially in YA. Like, I think she did the Pretty Little Liars series. She does like so much in YA, and middle grade as well. And so she's a great narrator. You probably haven't. Have you read it?
I have not read it, but it sounds great. I like it.
Like, I don't know.
I like a good boarding school drama or mystery, though.
Yeah, it was fun because like, so her basically like, well, pretty early on, her father was in the CIA. Well, that's what he tells her. And so it has these little like snippets where it's stories from her childhood where he's obviously teaching her the same skills that like these people know, but just like framing it differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then so she's like, she doesn't even know what the school is. Like, it takes her a while to even figure out like what's going on, and like literally people die at the school, people kill each other at the school,
It's intense. It's intense.
Yeah, but it was fun.
Yeah.
Even though that sounds weird.
No, that sounds fun. That sounds fun. I feel like you're talking to the right audience. I'm like,
yeah.
That's really cool.
Ebony said, just adding Killing November to my TBR list. Ebony says that every time I talk about an audiobook. This one's good though. Yeah. I'm always a sucker for boarding school book too. Yeah, there's just something about boarding school books.
I just picked up a new one. I haven't read it yet, but J.T. Ellison's new mystery, Good Girls Lie, I believe is the title, is also it's a boarding school mystery. So
that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
I love titles like that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So we're going to talk about today's viewer poll. So if you follow me on Twitter at all, you might have seen I had a very controversial tweet this week.
You did? Oh, so controversial.
Yeah. I suggested that people want to be published authors should read one book published in the last 5 years. And that's all I said. I didn't say, don't read older books. I didn't say burn the classics to the ground, which is apparently how some people
crazy
figure that out. So the poll is based on that kind of like thing. So I just was curious, like, how many books did you read last year? So let's pull the poll up, and I'll take a look. Can we see the answers there? Yeah. So how many books did you read in 2019? And so I just kind of like randomly came up with these categories. Just like, I know there's a huge difference between reading 0 books in a year and 15 books in a year, but that's where we're at because Twitter only lets you have 4 options. So
I don't think people who don't read would respond to the poll. So I think that actually you're good.
Well, I didn't think that until this week.
That's true.
Yeah. And also it's mainly people who follow me on Twitter, so they're more likely to be readers.
I think they're likely to be readers, yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of notifications. That would stress me out that you haven't clicked on.
Well, no, because it's that tweet went viral. Like so I'm literally I'm getting 20 a minute. So yeah. But it looks like we have like a good spread here though. 36% said 16 to 45. 26% said 45 to 80. 19% said they read more than 81 books.
That's amazing.
And then we have 19% that said 0 to 15. How many books do you know how many books you read last year?
I didn't count in 2019 because I counted in 2018 and I found it was stressing me out. That it sort of became competitive, and I don't like to read like that. So I think I read about a book a week. So I would say let's say we had a couple of bad weeks in there, and around 50, I would think.
Yeah.
What about you?
I read 92.
Ooh, oh my goodness.
But most of those are audiobooks.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And actually last year, my commute's only like 15 minutes now, but year before last, it was 45 minutes. And so I got a lot of audiobooks in.
But I would say, I feel like an audiobook takes longer than.
Well, I listen to it at 1.8 speed.
Oh, got it. Gotcha. Yeah.
And also I can do it while I'm driving, which I can't do with a physical book.
Yes, that's true.
I mean,
that's true.
Probably shouldn't.
Yeah, probably not.
But
not
like
recommended.
I will say more than 30 of those were for the Audis.
Right.
And we had
so
a deadline on those. Yeah. And so I was actually listening. Usually I just listen in the car, but I was actually listening at home so they could get through them.
Right. Right. And I should say, out of my 50, a lot of those are poetry collections. So that actually does not take very long to read. Rereading.
Some people, yeah. Some people were responding like, oh, this many, but a lot of them were picture books because they're picture book authors, you know?
Right. Or if you have children, right? I'm sure you're.
Or, yeah. It does take a little less time to read. I remember last year I was like getting close to the end of the year and I was like, let's read the short books on my queue so I can
both through the numbers. That was me in 2018 and I didn't like it. So I was like, I'm not going to count in 2019. I'm just going to read what I want.
Ebony said I hit 107 audiobooks last year. That's great.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. 120 in 2020. I like that.
Yeah. There were only maybe 11 hardcovers. She listens at 1.25 speed, but I listen during my entire 8-hour shift at work. Oh, okay.
Oh, gotcha.
Nice.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah, that is nice.
I try to listen at work, but I either do my work badly or forget what's happening in the book. So, let's see. I'm scrolling through here. Kendra, yeah, it's funny. Last time we talked about this, a lot of people listen to audio at faster speeds than normal.
That's clever. It's very clever.
I don't know. I probably read like 6 print books last year. Bess asked, how much do fanfics count for? They count the same, I think.
Yeah, I think they count the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't include all my Pitch Wars inbox reading.
Oh, yeah.
There are probably a couple books in there. Anyway. Yeah. So my followers are readers because I blocked all the ones that yelled at me. So
I can't believe people yelled at you. I'm sure it was
yelling at me.
I'm sure it was a stressful week for you, but it just seems so silly from the outside looking in. It's a strange thing to think is controversial.
Yeah, it really, really, really surprised me. So I'm still like, I'm kind of in shock. But like on the, not the bright side, but like Beverly Jenkins, who I'm a huge fan of, she followed me on Twitter during all of it. And I was like, it's all worth it now. It's fine. I love her so much. I like all my friends know I just like adore her. So, yeah. And like NK Jemison messaged me and was like,
oh, cool.
Yeah. I was like, this is good advice. And I was like, thank you. I love you. Yeah. So, so moving on to the quote of the week, which is another really big coincidence because I actually chose every quote of the week for every episode in October. And so I did not choose this specifically for this week, but it applies to everything else. Many people, myself among them, feel better at the mere sight of a book. Jane Smiley. Yeah. Read
I
a
like
book.
it. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I read that and I was like, true. Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Okay. Let's see. I get some comments. Kendra, NK Jemis. I know, right? Yeah, I love her too. She's a great author. And she agrees with me, so it's fine. All right, so I think that's it. Erica, can you tell everyone, we have your Twitter and your website in the description down below, so make sure to go check that out. But anything else you want to add or anything that's coming out soon?
Oh, I have a nonfiction book called Snake, about snakes, coming out in September.
Cool.
So thanks so much for having me. This was really fun.
Thank you so much, and thanks for dealing with my tech issues at the beginning.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I feel like that's just life on the internet.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna take you off the screen, and I'll finish the outro, and then I'll talk to you in just a minute. Okay.
Sounds good.
Bye. All right, so that was a fun episode. I'm glad we got the tech issues sorted out like much quicker than we did last episode. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like and subscribe right there so you don't miss another episode, and tell your friends because that is how people find out about things like this. There's also an option to subscribe to reminders via email and a Patreon down below. Thank you so much to my Patreon subscribers. I am so grateful for you, and I'm so happy to have your support every week. It just makes me so happy to know that you're out there supporting me. So, and the link for that in the description if you want to join that. The social media for all of our guests, both of our guests are in the description, along with the PubTalk Live social media. So make sure you check that out. The next episode is going to be very different. It's going to be a special episode. It's going to be live from Coastal Magic Convention, which is an urban fantasy and paranormal romance convention in Daytona. And I will be there with about 50 authors. Not all of them are going to be on the show, but we're probably going to have about 10 of them on the show and kind of do like little mini interviews through the night. So it's going to be a little bit different from what you're used to, but it should be super fun. And I think there are still tickets available. So if you are a paranormal romance, urban fantasy fan, make sure you check out Coastal Magic Convention. I think the website is just coastalmagicconvention.com because you could join us and then we would have a live show live in person. It's already live. That's confusing. Anyway, so thank you so much for watching. I don't have the regular outro video because I don't have the promo show image for next week, but I do just have kind of the thank you to our Patreon. And so that's what we're going to close out with this week. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.